Hello everyone, this is Darts here. This is my review on a classic form of literature. It's considered by many one of the greatest novels ever written. Well, children's novels anyway. The Hobbit. This was published 80 years ago. Hard to believe this book is 80 years old as of this recording. J.R.R. Tolkien, published his work for the rest of the world to finally read while he was still continuing writing the Sumerian, which I'll talk about way later in the future. He wrote The Hobbit. Now, how does this hold up? I think it holds up really well. I think it's a great book. And I think the movie disrespected this completely. I love this book. I really do. I read it 10 years ago. Well, 12. I read it 12 years ago, right after I watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I wanted to read the books. And I started with The Hobbit because that's where it all started. I didn't truly appreciate this book at the time until I was much older. Now, with the mindset of an adult, not an adolescent, I read this book with my current mindset, and I was blown away just how good the book really was. The attention to detail that J.R. Tolkien puts into this book, not to mention, it's hard to believe this was considered a children's novel because some of the stuff is not for kids, a lot of it. And I can argue that the characters in here are more relatable in the book than they are in the movie. Because, Bilbo in the book, I thought you couldn't help but cheer for Bilbo in the book. In the movie, I couldn't. Because, every character in the movie, the reason I'm talking about the movie compared to the book is the movie's out, and a lot of people are going to think of the movie first and the book second. Unfortunately, Bilbo, and the dwarves were far too competent. And there was no tension at all in any of the situations they were in. In the book, that's different. They're completely incompetent. They make so many stupid mistakes in the books. And that's what makes this adventure far more entertaining to read. I think it's a far better adventure in the book because, it's regular people trying to reclaim a lost treasure, and they don't actually immediately succeed at it like they do in the movie. Like, they constantly are doing things like, oh yeah, here's your axe, I caught it perfectly, and all this other stupid fucking bullshit that's in the movies. Maybe I should talk about the Hobbit movies another day and just talk about the book. The book, for the time that it came out, was considered a great book. Hell, they couldn't even keep this thing on the shelves because it was so popular when it was released. This book was so popular that a sequel would be made many years later. Well, it took J.R.R. Tolkien almost 20 years to actually complete it. But that's how popular this book was. Even before, this is back at a different time in history where, where literature was far more appreciated than it is today. This book, I think, is a great book for anyone to read. I think anyone who wants to appreciate literature, I think, should read The Hobbit. As someone who has a high appreciation for literature, The Hobbit, I think holds up really well. I think it's one of the greatest books ever written, and I thought the movie was an abomination. Now the animated movie, that also was adapted from this book, which I've never seen it, but I've heard it's more faithful to the book than Peter Jackson's version. Now, for those of you who don't know, J.R. Tolkien did revisit this book when he was publishing Lord of the Rings to make it fit in better. But if you pay attention to certain details in this book, this does foreshadow events that are going to happen later in Lord of the Rings. They even talk about the sorcerer and the Tower of Balgador, and they briefly mention what Gandalf was doing. But they don't mention that either. They even mention certain things about Elrond. It's like this is a great book to read, and if you haven't read it yet, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. I think skipping this and going straight to The Lord of the Rings, I think you're doing yourself a great disservice, because not only is this a great story, it's unappreciated. It's not as good as Lord of the Rings. No, it's not. But I think it's a classic that anyone should read. Anyone that wants to appreciate any classic literature, I think, should read this. I think it's a great book. It gets a masterpiece rating. To me, I think it's that good. This is Darcinovia, over and out, and hopefully, some point in the future, I'll review the Lord of the Rings books, which will be a much longer review, and because there's a lot more to talk about. Later, guys, and have a great day.